My name is Emily Hislop. I'm with Project Sentinel. We're joined here by Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, and both our organizations are local partners with the state rent relief program. So tonight, this afternoon, Angela is going to explain a little bit about the rent relief program, documents that are needed, who qualifies. Then I will cover a little more about tips and what the process may look like, how to prepare, how to work with your tenant. And my colleague Joanne Pham of Project Sentinel has prepared a video to show everyone what it's like to walk through the application. We ask that if you have questions, if you can use, there's a Q&A function in Zoom. If you can type your questions in there as you think of them, we will pause at the end of each section and periodically to address questions as they come up. We also at the end there'll be an opportunity if you want to raise your hand. We can take questions at the end. Also, when the survey closes out, when the webinar closes out, we will be a link to a survey will pop up, and we would really appreciate any feedback on the webinar. We really want to try to help people as much as possible learn how to walk through this process themselves. We do have phone support and everything, but any way we can improve these webinars for the future would be great. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Angela Lanes of Catholic Charities.
Thank you, Emily. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Lanes, and I'm with Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. Today, I'm going to be talking about the qualifications and some checklists that clients would need to qualify for the COVID-19 rent relief program. So what is the COVID-19 rent relief program? It is a state-funded program that will help income-eligible households pay rent and utilities for both past and future payments. And the key thing is it helps families stay in their home and meet the minimum requirement to avoid eviction from the latest moratorium. It is state funding, so payment comes from the state, and it does not come from Catholic Charities or Project Sentinel or any state partners. Who can apply? Both landlords and tenants can apply. It is aimed toward tenants, but landlords can apply and initiate the process, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. What are the qualifications? Qualifications for both tenant and landlord. This is going to be just a high-level overview, and there's some checklists that go into deeper detail of each. So for tenants, being behind on rent or utilities, having experienced hardship due to COVID-19, and income less than 80% of the area median income. So it's all of these, it's not one or the other. For landlords, being the property owner or property management agency who has legal authority to lease the unit, have one or more eligible tenants with unpaid rent between the time frame of April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021, and that's due to a COVID-19 related event. Have a tenant or lease written agreement with eligible tenants or other evidence of a rental relationship, and agree to waive 20% of the unpaid rent for the above time period. So that part is key for landlord participation, to agree to waive the 20% of unpaid rent from that April to March time period. And getting into the checklist for both tenant and landlord, again, this is going to be a high level overview, and then we'll get deeper into the landlord checklist today. So for tenants, decide if they're eligible and have an email address. It is mandatory to have an email address. Verify identity, income for all family members over the age of 18, verify residence, verify rent owed, and verify utilities owed. For the landlord, also deciding if they're eligible and having an email address, still mandatory for the landlord as well. Verify tenants' residence and units, verify property ownership, verify rent owed. So getting deeper into the landlord checklist, an IRS form or verifying, an IRS W-9 form is needed to receive payment and to verify tenant's residence. So it could be one of the following. For these, it doesn't have to be all 5. It could either be the lease agreement, state issued program ID with license, official letter from a third party, government issued library card with name and address, or utility statements from provider. So any one of those could help verify the tenant's residence. To verify ownership, again, it's just going to be one of the following. That could be property deeds, a mortgage note, tax form, homeowner's insurance, or a property management agreement if the property manager is applying. So again, just one of those, not all of them. Verify rent owed, again, one of the following examples: a current lease signed by the applicant and landlord, identifying the address and establishing the rental payment amount. If there is no signed lease, just evidence of the amount of rental payment could include like bank statements, check stubs, or other documentation that shows a pattern of paying rent to the landlord. A written attestation by a landlord who can be verified as the owner or management agent of the unit can also work. And again, we have checklists with these that go into greater detail. So how much assistance is provided? How much rent will be covered? So the question of, with landlord participation, 80% of past due rent from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021 can be covered. That's the max amount, 80% of past due rent that's being applied for. If the landlord chooses not to participate for whatever reason, 25% of past due rent from April 2020 to March 2021 can be given to the renter for their late rent. And qualified renters can apply for up to 25% of future rent for the months of April, May, and June of 2021. So that minimum 25% of past due rent helps the tenant stay in their home due to the latest moratorium. So how do clients apply? How is our program, Catholic Charities, specifically assisting them? So in addition to just sharing information about the program, we can help clients apply for the assistance. So the first step is calling our Catholic Charities program number, which I'll share in a minute. And once we get on the phone with either a tenant or a landlord, we would screen them to get their information, if they are a tenant or a landlord, ask a few other questions, and then schedule an appointment for that client. And that could be over the phone, it could be a Zoom virtual appointment, or in person, depending on the need to navigate the application online. And during that appointment, the case manager would help the tenant or landlord fill out the application on the Housing is Key website. And Housing is Key website is the state website for this program. So again, the landlord and tenant are responsible for completing the application, uploading it online, checking their status, but local partners at Catholic Charities and Project Sentinel are here to help navigate that way. And prior to the appointment, we can send those checklists and some other forms that clients might need to fill out prior to applying, so everything is ready to go. And then how can they call us? That's our phone number for Catholic Charities. You can also apply online directly, so you do not need to go through us to apply or any other partner. You can go directly online, do their eligibility quiz, and get signed up to complete the application. But again, you must have an email to apply. That's key. You create an account that Project Sentinel is going to show you in a second, and you can check your status there, as well as notify the tenant or landlord, whoever's applying first, that the other is applying. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Emily with Project Sentinel.
Thank you, Angela, for that overview. I didn't see any questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to move on to my portion. And if there's questions during that, we'll take them then. And maybe you have a question now, and maybe it will be addressed in our section. Just sharing my screen. Okay, so if you're wondering who Project Sentinel is, here's a little bit about our organization. We're a nonprofit housing service agency, and we serve most of the South Bay and beyond. We have 3 core services. I am with the neutral tenant landlord counseling division. We do dispute resolution and education like this. We also have a fair housing division and also a HUD certified housing counseling, which includes first-time homebuyer, mortgage, foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, and other credit counseling. This also includes small landlord mortgage relief counseling pursuant to the mortgage relief options that were passed into state law. If you want any information about that, please call our 800 number here. I will note that we are not able to offer legal advice or legal representation, but we do offer tips, best practices, and an overview of local and state laws. If you are looking for legal services, you should contact an attorney or a lawyer referral service. I'm going to go over a little bit about tips for the rent relief application process for landlords. So why should landlords apply? And really, it's more that the landlord is initiating the application process, because the landlord needs to do one part and the tenant needs to do one part. So when the landlord initiates the process, they are the ones entering in what amounts are owed by the tenant. You're most likely to have access to that information, and you can make sure it is entered in according to your records. A landlord can apply for multiple affected tenants through the system. So this relieves you from having to repeat information over and over. Also, you're moving the process along. You're going to be uploading the lease, the proof of ownership documents, and any other documents that prove how much rent is owed by the tenants. So you're kind of in control of how quickly this process goes. You're not waiting for someone to reach out to you. And you also get to designate what preferred payment, if you want it via ACH or check, that you will receive directly from the government. Also, once you've submitted your part, you can check the status of your application through your portal account. And this is a question we often get but as a landlord, to participate and receive 80%, you have to agree to waive 20% of the back rent that's owed. So that's the rent between April 1st, 2020 and March 31st of this year that was unpaid. So here's some things that we like to tell people. There's tenants who have lost work or they've incurred expenses. They probably have other debts that have accrued, and paying back the owed rent could take a long time. Whereas if you go through the state program, you will be guaranteed getting that 80% within, we're not sure about the exact timing now, but a month or two. You're guaranteed that you're not relying on the tenant. The only thing you will rely on is the tenant's participation. And we can give you some tips on how to assist and encourage that. For those of you that aren't aware, collecting debts is not easy. First, you have to go to court to get a judgment. So that's step one, but that piece is just a piece of paper. It doesn't equal money. If a tenant was unable to pay rent and they're a renter, it's unlikely they have any assets that you could put a lien against. And it can be very expensive or costly to try and levy bank accounts and go through that process. It's for most collection attorneys, they can tell you that getting 80% of your debt in a short period of time is a good deal. And then if you're going to go another method, it's very unlikely that you would get that much money. And if not, it would be over time. Also, another really important reason for landlords to participate is that for tenants that would have qualified for rent relief, whether or not they applied, but if they were in that, if they met the qualification criteria, their rent debt cannot be assigned or sold. So typically for credit card debts or other consumer debts, people often, or companies often, sell them to a third-party collection agency. They sell the debt, they get some money, or the collection agency gets a portion. You cannot do that for tenants that would have qualified for rent relief. So they were financially impacted due to COVID-19 and make less than 80% of AMI. Furthermore, if you were to pursue a court action to collect the back rent owed, the landlord must document either showing that they cooperated with rent relief efforts by the tenant, or that they made an attempt to initiate the application process. They have to show documents when they file their court complaint. So these are all, reasons why this is reasons to participate in this program. And just as a reminder, we want to remind landlords about their noticing requirements so they can preserve their rights. There should have been a notice served if you have any tenants that have unpaid rent since March of 2020 through now. There's a notice from the state of California, and it's on the website that we link to here. I mentioned in the chat, we will be sending everyone the slides, so you can click on these links. So this notice, which is the first one you see, is basically notifying the tenant of their rights under SB 91, the eviction protection rights, and the COVID-19 debt rights, and what steps they need to take. If you have served a notice to pay or quit or are going to serve a notice to pay or quit because a tenant has unpaid rent, it must be with these state forms and depending on the time period where the rent was due. So if it's rent, if you haven't, or if you still have a tenant who has some unpaid rent from last year, the summer, March 1st, 2020 through August 31st, that's a special notice because that rent debt is treated, it has further protections than the debt that accrued after. And if for any unpaid rent from September 1st of last year through June 30th of this year, there's a special 15-day notice to pay or quit, which outlines the things the tenants must do. And you would also, in both of these notices, put what amounts were owed, what months, and what amounts was paid or not paid. Also, with any notice to pay or quit, landlord has to also provide an unsigned declaration form. It's a declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress. This has to be served with whatever notice to pay or quit may be given. Remember, it's a 15-day, not a 3-day. This is the law until at least June 30th. Whether or not you think the debt is related, the non-payment of rent is related to COVID or not. So this declaration has specific information. It lists all the reasons, categories of how a tenant may be impacted financially due to COVID-19 and their reason for paying rent. They sign this under penalty of perjury. So this is considered, an admissible court document. They're testifying to their impact. And this is all the documentation the tenant needs to provide you as the landlord. Only in a very limited category of very high income, not very, but high income tenants, a landlord might be able to be permitted to ask for further documentation, but you have to have private knowledge. And if you think you're in that situation, I suggest you contact us and we can walk you through, what would allow you to do that and what notices you would have to serve. But for most people, this is all. They don't have to provide you a pay stub or an application for unemployment or anything like that. This declaration suffices. It should be provided in the language that the tenant's contract was negotiated in. However, because all of these forms on the state website are available in 6 languages, if you happen to know that English is not your tenant's first language or primary language, you might as well. It's a good practice to give them a copy of it in English and their native tongue. It's only required if the language is, if the contract was negotiated, but it can't hurt. You also should instruct the tenant on how to return the declaration to you because the 15 days is the 15 days they have to sign and return the declaration to show you they're impacted. You can ask them to take a picture and text it to you if that's the way you communicate, take a picture and email it, or just return it to you by mail. And they have 15 business days to do this from when you serve it. Okay, going back to rent relief, we just wanted to remind everyone of those requirements. And also for landlords, this is how you preserve your rights. You want to serve these notices and keep records of the time, proofs of service of when you served it and how. So as Angela had discussed, to qualify, tenants have to meet three criteria. So the first is that at least one member of the tenant household has qualified for unemployment benefits, experienced a reduction in income, incurred significant costs, or experienced other financial hardship due to COVID-19. The declaration that they sign and return to you fulfills this requirement. So this is what they will provide as showing that they've experienced financial hardship. Furthermore, there must be at least one member of the tenant household who's at risk of homelessness or housing instability. This can be to past due rent, past due utilities, unsafe or unhealthy living conditions, or some other evidence of risk. However, a 15-day notice to pay or quit from the landlord fulfills this requirement, as does past due utilities. That's what they can show as evidence of risk of homelessness or housing instability. And lastly, they must have a the total household income cannot be more than 80% of the area median income. And we'll go over what that means in terms of numbers for Santa Clara County. So what we've included here is a chart, and it's the numbers across the top represent how many members of the household. So for example, if you have 4 people in the tenant household, maybe parents and 2 kids, to qualify, that family has to earn $112,150 or less. Now I will note that these numbers may be lower than what pops up while you're in the application process. We're not really clear which numbers they're using, but this is the ones from 2020. They might be applying some hybrid of 2021, but these are going to be probably the lowest. So if a tenant household is on the cusp of that bottom line, so the last line is represent 80% of the area median income for Santa Clara County. If they're on the cusp, they can go do the screening questions and they may actually qualify. And we want to emphasize that household income is everybody who lives in the rental unit who's over 18, their income is included in this calculation. So if you have 2 roommates who may have no other relationship other than they share a rental unit together, both their income is going to go into this equation. As Angela said, it will be applied towards rental arrearages, back rent, prospective rent if needed, past utility payments, and other housing expenses. But the priority is in that order. So first, the relief will go towards the back rent, and then if pending of funding availability, those other things. So just based on some questions we had, what we've gotten from both landlords and tenants alike, we thought we'd include some of these information. So a leaseholder for the tenant is the one who needs to complete their side of the application and who you should be putting down if you are initiating the application process. And they have to include the income info for all their co-tenants, subtenants, or occupants that are over 18 years old. So if only one, so say you have 3 roommates, but only one of them is impacted by COVID-19, like they lost their job. If those other co-tenants, and I'm talking about the traditional, you have 3 people listed on the lease, they're all what we call jointly and severally liable for the rent and other obligations. If the other co-tenants are reluctant to share their income information with you, so the impacted tenant can receive the rent relief, you can always note to them that unless their contract states otherwise, that they're going to be liable for the impacted tenant's debt as well. So there's some incentive for them to cooperate. Which leads to another question is, what if the household income exceeds the threshold to qualify for rent relief? So we strongly recommend using dispute resolution services. You have them available in this Santa Clara County, free and neutral. And these services can be used to help with a neutral third party work out payment agreements and plans. I've put the link to our dispute resolution services, as well as the City of San Jose's housing mediation program through the County Office of Mediation and Ombudsman Services. So if you have that situation, either try to talk to your tenants and work it out, or utilize the services that are out there and free. Also, it is required to set up your account to do the application process. Both the landlord and tenant will need an email address to create the account and apply. And a landlord needs the tenant's email to be able to do their side of the application. So what we get is, what if I don't know my landlord's email, or what if I don't know my tenant's email? Well, we encourage that you talk to them and ask them and let them know why. Say, hey, I'm initiating this application. Here's some information. Do you have an email? So the email will be sent to get the application started. If somebody does not have an email, you can have them contact Catholic Charities or us, and we can assist them on how they might set one up, or talk to them about any trusted relatives or any buddy around them who can help them set an email up and help them through the process. I know Angela said this before, but the county didn't create this program. We didn't create this program, the application portal. It's at the state. So we don't have any power over this email requirement. It's there. So we're just doing our best to help people through it. So once, if a tenant has initiated an application, the landlord will receive an email from Neighborly Software. And we wanted to do a little screenshot of what that looks like, because it doesn't look at first blush like it's official from the state of California. So Neighborly Software is the software application that's running this application portal, and you would receive an email from California COVID-19 rent relief. So don't be concerned. This is the correct email. When you click on the link, it will take you to the state's application portal. So not just before the application, but we encourage tenants to communicate and work together to complete the application. Some questions might be confusing, and maybe your landlord has figured it out, or maybe your tenant has figured it out, and you can work together to complete. We also suggest that tenants and landlords let the other know if they have applied, and to look out for that email and point them to either Catholic Charities or us if they need help. Joanne's going to go over, we'll take the questions. Joanne's going to go into what the application process looks like from the landlord side in a bit. But this is one place you can start, is go to any of these web addresses will take you to this page. So housingiskey.com is the easiest for most people to remember. It's also in Spanish, laviviendaesclave.com, or you can just write www.housing.ca.gov. That will take you to the Housing is Key website. We've highlighted the purple box where you could start the application screening process. Just next to it in peach is that same screening process in Spanish. And although it's hard to make out here, there's in 6 languages some information about the contact number to learn more about the rent relief program and be connected to a local partner. So that is in any of those languages. So that's, you can call the number, you can start with this link, or United Way has partnered with Housing is Key, and you could do this right now, and it might be an easy way to set up your account, is you text rent to 211-211. So in the spot for phone number, put 211-211 and text the word rent. And the first question that's going to pop up is, it's going to tell you hi and ask you what language is your preference. And there's a whole list. So you type the language, and then it will ask you another question. What's your zip code, or what zip code is the property in? Are you a tenant or a landlord? Then if you say you're a landlord, do you have tenants who have unpaid rent since April 1st of last year? Do you have a tenant lease or written agreement? And do you agree to waive 20% of the unpaid rent for the above time period? And if you click yes, it'll say you're eligible to apply, and it'll ask a couple more questions and then direct you to the Housing is Key website, which is optimized for mobile. So you can even get the process started there. Very quickly, this is the process flow chart that the state program has provided us. So at the top left in the navy blue box where the landlord initiates the application, then an email will be sent to the tenant inviting them to participate, and that email will link them to the application portal. They can set up their account and start verifying information and uploading their documents. Once they have done that and submitted, it goes to a case manager on the state side who verifies the information and will communicate with the parties if there's anything that is not complete or unclear. Once that has been verified or reviewed, the applications would be signed by both parties and the tenant receives the 80% compensation. If the tenant initiates the application, and a case ID is generated, so it says 5 digits, it's probably going to be more because there's a lot of people in California. I imagine it'd be 6 or 7. I think right now they're up to 6 digits. And then what happens is the landlord gets an email with inviting them to participate with the case ID number. And that's helpful because if you are a landlord with multiple affected tenants, you don't need to create an account for each one. You just go to your account and then you enter in the tenant's case ID number, and that'll link you up with that tenant. Everything is matched up by property address. So if a landlord and tenant apply independently of each other, it's going to be matched up in the system. And if everything works perfectly, then it'll go to a case manager who will, notify both parties that they've completed their sides of the application and go from there. So if a tenant initiates and the landlord does not respond, and there's multiple attempts made by the case manager, is our understanding, to participate. And this is why we encourage the tenant to let the landlord know they've applied. But if for some reason the landlord does not participate or do their side, at a certain point, the case manager will just call the application completed, and the tenant will get 25% of the back rent owed. So they are protected from eviction. Okay, this slide has our COVID-19 webpage, our phone number, and our email address if you have any questions about rent relief. But please feel free to, also if you have other questions about the eviction protections or tenant landlord laws, we can direct you to the proper case manager in our organization and help you. We just ask that when you call that you identify the city the property's in, and just the nature of your question. That way we can connect you to either our ERAP team, which is dealing with rent relief questions specifically, or the relevant jurisdictions case manager. And that's the housing is key. I'll leave it on our page. I'm going to click on. So we have a couple questions. I don't think Angela would have any more information than I do about how long the whole approval process takes. We do know that in jurisdictions that have just the state program running, that that there's been $1 million distributed so far across the state. So there were some applications that were submitted when this opened up in March 15th. But as I keep telling people, it's like a train getting started. It's going to be a little slow at first, and then as the wheels get going, it'll go faster and faster. But also the process goes as it can go quickly if parties are organized and have their paperwork ready and prepare for the application process. So that's one way to, and that's why landlords beginning the process can actually make it go a little faster, because they have access to things like lease documents and rent ledgers, easier access than tenants, and they'll be able to put that information into the system. And also we have a landlord who's asking the question that both the tenant and landlord have completed their forms. I just can tell you from what we understand, because Santa Clara is in a situation where they are going to have 2 programs based on the federal funding. There has to be some agreements signed in place before the applications that are pending right now start to be processed by the state. My understanding is that's either just happened or about to happen. So you should be contacted by a case manager. You can call the Housing is Keys number to check on the status. There's also an email address in the application portal that you can see if they can help. We, Catholic Charities, Project Sentinel, the local partners, we have no access to the system. It's only the state's implementer that has access. So we cannot check on the status for you. We can just tell you what we've learned anecdotally and give you this number. I will stop for a second. Are there any other questions about what we've covered so far before we go into the demonstration? You can raise your hand. I don't see any raised hands. Okay, Joanne, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily and Angela, for your very informative presentations. And I'll just share my screen to provide the video. And thank you also to Christina, who helped me put this together. My name is Joanne. I'm with Project Sentinel, and I'm here to show you how to navigate the state application portal for rent relief. If you want to get to this homepage, you can actually go to housingiskey.com, which takes you to the same page. If you are a Spanish-speaking applicant, you can actually type in La Vivienda Esclave. If your primary language is not English, there's an option on the top right of this home page where you can select from a variety of languages that are powered by Google Translate. Although not 100% accurate, it can still help you navigate these helpful resources at the bottom of the page. But whenever you are ready to access the State Rent Relief Program application, you can click this purple box on the left, and to the right of that, if you are a Spanish-speaking applicant, you can click the light orange box. If you are a landlord, click I'm a landlord, and you can scroll through and read the program overview information here to understand the eligibility criteria and the other documents that you'll need to collect in order to apply. There's a landlord checklist hyperlink here that you can click to have a more detailed account of the types of documents you'll need to provide, and then click New Application. On this page, at the top left bar, you can type in your tenant's property address. That's where the jurisdiction will be based on, is the tenant property location. So you can type in the city and state, the zip code, or the actual address. It's recommended that you type in the full address just so that you know for sure that you are applying in the correct location. In this case, we will just put the city name. This view button here will take you directly to the applicable program application website, which, as you can see here, is still the Housing is Key state portal. Just answer these questions very honestly. There are only 4 questions. Are you a landlord or a tenant? Is your rental unit located on tribal lands for one of the following tribes? If you are not a member of a tribe or do not believe your property is located on any tribal lands, you can just click no. But if you think that might be true, you can click Show More. Are you a landlord who has 1 or more eligible tenants who owe you back rent from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021? If your application is accepted and you are compensated 80% of your tenant's rental arrears, do you agree to waive the remaining 20% of your tenant's unpaid rent for that specific time period? And this is where the page will take you if you have passed the eligibility questionnaire. So you'll be given a list of items that you'll need to collect before you begin your application, and then you can click Apply Now. Once you've hit New Application, you'll be taken to this registration page. You'll click the Register tab over here and be able to enter your primary email address to receive notifications, first and last name, and you'll have to choose a password that meets the requirements listed down here. A minimum of 12 characters, including an uppercase and lowercase letter, number, and special character. But we'll log into our own account in order to show you the existing information that we've already pre-entered into the application. Also, if you are a non-English speaker, you can adjust the to a different language of these 6 options. You can choose Mandarin, English, Tagalog, Korean, Spanish, or Vietnamese. Okay, so make sure you click to edit your existing application in this section if you already have one that's been started. But if you're just starting new, then you would not see this section anyways, and you'd have to click down here. Click here to start a new application. We're going to edit one that exists. For anyone who is uncomfortable with technology, doesn't know how to upload documents online, or is just simply uncomfortable with this online application process, they do have the option to add a user by clicking View Users over here on the left side, clicking Add a User and entering someone's email address here who they are entrusting to help them with the application. And once they click Add, an email notification will be sent to that person at that email address, inviting them to create an account, and they will be able to see this application's case ID number in their homepage under Continuing an Existing Application. You can't really easily delete these email addresses, so please be sure that the person you are allowing to help you with your application is someone you trust or is qualified as a local partner to help you with your application process. Okay, so the first page is called the Program Overview section. It says here, if you received an email invitation to complete this application, please provide the 6-digit tenant case ID number provided in the invitation email. So you should have received a case ID number similar to this that actually belongs to your tenant's application. And to help case managers match your applications and, speed along this process, it's helpful to put that here. The tenant's case ID number should be placed here. And then their first and last name and contact information. Read through all of these overview paragraphs as well to better understand the program. And so the next page is going to be about your information. So your name, address, all of this is going to be in your W-9 form. A W-9 form is a request for taxpayer information. So basically, in order to pay you, the state wants your information on a W-9 form submitted to them so that it is, basically on record with the IRS. If you don't have a DUNS number, this is probably not applicable to you, so don't worry about that. But please put in the same information as what was in your W-9, a social security number if you are not a business, or if you do have a tax ID number, to put that here instead if you choose, and then to just select what type of number that is. And then you would upload that W-9 form here. So at 8.9, select your preferred method of payment. ACH just means direct deposit or wire transfer, or if you prefer by check, then it could be mailed to you. And if the address is different, then if the mailing location is different than what's on your W-9 form, then you would specify where you want that mailed here. And if you have a property manager, then you can list them here if you'd like. This page requests your tenant's information, including their name, contact information, and the property where they live. If you scroll down, you'll see that I've already entered some fake tenants here, and you'll be asked to include their monthly rent amount, their past due rent amount, the lease information, including their start and end dates, and any late fees that were charged to them. You'll have to upload your lease information here, as well as your proof of ownership of each of the properties of the affected tenants here.
Joanne, can you
So
pause
if you
for
have
1
more than
second?
10 tenants, be aware that there is a
I just want to note, on the application, there are spots for late fees, but under SB 91, late fees cannot be charged on the back rent that was due for impacted tenants. At times, you may have to enter in something, but to enter in 0, you would need to do 0.00. Joanne may cover this, but I just want to note that. So if you enter late fees in there, you may not be able to collect them. The application doesn't always match exactly with the law. They're still building it. So please have some patience with these little quirks. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thanks for sharing, Emily. And I did not go over adding the tenants and that little glitch. So thanks for pointing that out. Template to use that is built into this application. When you click here, it'll automatically download an Excel spreadsheet template that you can fill out. I just wanted to also elaborate, since I think it kind of got cut off before, but this is the spreadsheet that when you clicked that hyperlink built into the application, for those who have 10 or more affected tenants, you can use this spreadsheet template in place of adding them one by one in the application. So this is the spreadsheet that will allow you to write in that all of your tenants' information if you have more than 10, including their name, contact information, their property address, location of the city, state, zip code, the monthly rent that is owed, the lease information, and the amount of rent and late fees that are owed by those tenants. So going back to this tenants information section, just be aware that if you do not include the right documents in the right place, you won't be able to move forward. So even though this section says paperwork, you should upload the lease or rent statement up here and not down here where it's the proof of ownership being requested. Also, if you delete any documents that you upload up here, do not click this delete symbol, since this will delete your entire tenant section. And down here, just be aware that where it says the tenant name should appear in the title of each upload, that just means that in the electronic file document name that you create that's being uploaded, it should actually have the name of the tenant in the front of that, or somewhere in the title of the document. And finally, this is the last page for the landlord rental assistance application. It is essentially a contract, so you should read this very carefully. And once you go through this agreement and you decide that you agree to participate, you would click all these check boxes and then click here to electronically sign by stating your name and then hitting sign. And before you hit complete and submit, I would recommend that you go back through sections A and B one more time to double check all your information is accurate and correct, including your tenant's contact information if you do not know whether or not they applied already, and then hit complete and submit. And that's all for the landlord's rental assistance application. So if anyone has any questions at this time, we can pause and answer those, but otherwise we do have one more video that's very short to share with you all just about the mobile view of this website. And I don't see any questions, so I'll just move forward. So it looks essentially the same as the computer website. You would click the same purple box, say that you're a landlord, scroll down and review the eligibility criteria and required documents. You would click new application if that is true for you. And a little bit hidden at the top is where you would enter the address information. And you would go through the same for eligibility questionnaire, 4 questions. You can see down here is the symbol for changing your language in the mobile version. And although it does not say the view edit button in the continuing application section, if you just click the bar, it pops up anyways. And in this mobile version, this arrow at the top left is where you would see the other sections once clicked. So you can easily enter in all the required information. And so when you choose to add a file, you'll see that there's a selection of choosing from your library, taking a photo, or browsing your other applications that hold documents such as a PDF application. You can add in your tenant and the window will pop up. I clicked the template for adding in bulk tenants, which it actually pops up to the Excel spreadsheet. And that's all for the mobile version. I also want to note for the bulk tenant uploads, for landlords who have a lot of different properties in many different jurisdictions, you would just have to confirm that those properties also would still apply through the state program. So just like how the application took you to that map where you can enter in the property addresses, you should be entering in, test out some of the different cities. If you have properties in Fremont, for example, and then properties in Santa Clara, Fremont actually has its own program that's locally administered and would not apply through the state, but Santa Clara is part of Santa Clara County and would apply through Housing is Key.
And I'm typing a message to the landlord from Fremont with information of where he can try to seek help.
Got it. I actually didn't even notice that question when I thought up of that scenario, but thank you, Emily, for answering that.
So I encourage anybody to raise your hand if you have any questions, or even if there's things that we didn't cover or cover enough that you would have liked, we would like to know for future webinars, so we can make sure we're giving people all the information that they're looking for. Has anybody raised a hand? Okay. So the landlord who's asking about the status of their application, I would encourage you to call that number. I'll pull it up. Because we can't tell the status, and if you haven't received an email, then that's something that you should probably contact them about for maybe technical assistance. If you're still not getting through, please send us an email and we will let our partner know that it's if there's an issue there. If you haven't tried, please try to call this number and see if they can connect you with a case manager or provide you some assistance. And you may be able to go back and check on the status of your application. I'm not sure.
You can also email support@ca-rentrelief.com, and they may be able to provide a little bit more detail there as well. And I will drop that in the chat.
And again, here's our contact information and webpage.